decide to enter into politics, having jumped from school board to state legislature, and especially at such a young age?
Well, I genuinely want to make a difference, and I felt that when I got into politics, I did so with pure intentions. I was fresh out of high school, wanting to make a difference in my local school system. Felt that the incumbent school board members were a little out of touch with reality. I actually ran against the youngest school board member in my town. She's 52 years old. When I was elected and seated to serve, there were 2 in their 50s, 2 in their 60s, and 1 gentleman in his 70s. So to say that I added a little diversity at 19 would be an understatement.
As a Republican representative, what does being conservative mean to you?
Well, I think first you have to look at the alternative. What does it mean to be a liberal? And I think fundamental to being a conservative is the belief in individual freedom and liberty, the belief that government's role is to create an environment for you to be successful, to fly as far and as high as your own energies will take you, as opposed to the government deciding who's winners and losers, the government deciding what's best for you, the government deciding all of these things for you. Rather, it's about individual freedom and liberty. And if you look at really what the concepts and the precepts for what the Founding Fathers had in mind when they wrote our documents, it was really more of trying to get away from government than always trying to bring government into whatever situation it be, whether it's your, what career you want to go into, or how business is affected in free markets. And so much of what's happening right now in Washington, I believe, is in contrast with those founding principles, and ultimately in contrast with what mainstream America believes in what freedom and liberty is all about in our country.
How would you encourage the youth to get more involved in politics? I've heard you say that it would be great for Congress if there was younger members all across the board.
Mm-hmm.
What would you encourage them to do?
Well, let me also mention, you had asked about young people voting for Obama. I think part of the problem there was people were not sure who he was and what he stood for. I mean, this is a man who, was elected to the United States presidency after literally just under 4 years of being a United States senator. So he had very little track record in terms of accomplishments and votes. And so people weren't sure what hope and change meant. And I think now people are starting to realize, and certainly younger people, people that are even younger than me that are in college now, what this type of change means for them and their eventual employment out in the working world. And I believe more and more young people are waking up to this kind of change and realize, you know what, maybe I am conservative, maybe I am a Republican, maybe I don't want the government bailing everyone out and spreading everyone's wealth. Maybe I want conservative principles over the liberal ideology that will empower me to go out and use my entrepreneurial efforts, whether it be in social service agencies or business or in government, to go do well for myself, my family, and my country. And I think now young people with double-digit unemployment are realizing that maybe we need to go down a different path and go back to some of those conservative principles that our country was founded on.
You've been very vocal about government oversight and transparency. How have you promoted that?
Well, I happen to be on the Government Oversight Committee, and we've promoted a number of things through hearings and then ultimately legislation. One of the bills that comes to mind is gotten some attention here now nationally, which was, of course, the President's pledge during the campaign that the health care debate negotiations should take place on C-SPAN. This was a pledge that he made repeatedly, and now that he's in a position of power and ability to make that happen, he really turned a back on that pledge. And so I'm joined by many of my Republican colleagues in a piece of legislation that would mandate that any negotiations on that health care bill, regardless of what the bill is, be done in the light of day. And so trying to keep the President accountable to that pledge is one example of the transparency. The second, of course, is all of the bailouts that have been going on. Where is the money going? The first piece of legislation that I was successful in passing as a freshman this year was on the TARP reauthorization language, something that I wasn't necessarily supportive of. It happened before I got here, but I felt it was important, if they're going to be handing out all this money to banks, that we ought to know which banks are getting it, how much they're getting, and what the terms of repayment are. And so I offered up an amendment, and it ultimately passed the House of Representatives, that required a website be established at the federal government that make it clear to the taxpayers who exactly is getting this money, why, and what the terms of repayment are. So there's been steps that I've tried to walk to do my part to promote transparency, but it's been a tough fight, and I find it a little ironic that with the President and a Speaker of the House who started this past year saying that this was going to be the most transparent government in history, that we would be having these kind of fights to try and open up government to the American people.
You've been very supportive of the taxpayer, the small businessman, the entrepreneur. What can you do in Congress to help those people who are bearing the brunt of all the taxes, especially in this economic state?
Well, first, it's kind of the Hippocratic oath that doctors take. First, do no harm. And I think that is the first thing that Congress needs to do. Stop harming small business. Stop harming the job creators of this country, while many of the elected officials here in Washington pontificate about job creation. I find it a bit ironic. As a former entrepreneur myself, my background's more in business than it is in politics. I know that if you want job creation, it's not going to be government spending, it's not going to be a new program, it's not going to be driving our nation further in debt. It's going to happen when we incentivize entrepreneurs to go out and take risk, make investment, use their entrepreneurial skills to create jobs. It's going to be the small business guy. 7 out of the 10 new jobs created in America last year were done by small business owners. So if we want to get serious about creating jobs and growing our economy, getting out of the rut we're in, what better way to do it than promote small businesses? And that's in sharp contrast to the agenda that the White House and the Congress has been going down, which is, $1 trillion debt creator in the stimulus, cap and trade, which would raise, hundreds of millions of dollars of taxes and fees on small businesses, a health care bill that luckily seems to be stuck right now, but that bill had, again, hundreds of millions of dollars in fees on small businesses, job creators, and you can't create jobs if more and more of your resources are being taken by the federal government. So first, we need to do no harm, and second, we need to create an environment where entrepreneurialism, risk-taking, and investment is encouraged and incentivized.